Good morning, everybody, and how are you today? So we are back for another episode of the Wired for Success podcast, and today we are coming with a big header. We are going to talk about labels, and we know that talking about labels is something that we cannot really go about with one episode. So this is going to be a series of episodes. We're going to have a guest next week. But for this week, we're going to start with a little bit of an introduction and a little bit of our thought processing with myself and Steve. So here we are today with my colleague Steve Costello and myself, Patience Modevi, for the Wired for Success podcast. So we're going to talk a little bit about the getting labeled and put into a box. This is something that we could go on and on about, but mainly we're going to talk a little bit about the stories that we've seen or the things that we have experienced, and also um, the the theory and the sociological aspect of it comes into it. So Steve, if you want to share with us a little bit about the labeling theory, as you were saying.
Sure, of course. So, hi everybody. Good to see you again. Well, maybe see, maybe not. For anybody who's interested, I'm still working in a building site. It's not finished yet, but we're getting there. So, what are we talking about? Labeling theory. There is a theory called labeling theory, and labeling theory argues that self-identity, the way we see ourselves, and our behavior as individuals can be influenced or determined even by the terms that are used to describe us or even to classify us. So if you think about it, think about the media, how you see particular groups classified in the media. The group of people who live in this block of flats in the center of Birmingham, for example. Birmingham just came out of my head because of the bankruptcy story. I'm not thinking of a true example. So what happens to people when they're labeled? It leads to stereotypes. So stereotypes begin to form. All the kids who live in that block of flats are troublemakers. All of them. Whereas there might be one troublemaker out of 50, and the other 49 are actually really nice kids who just want to get on in the world. But there is a stereotype at work, and that stereotype influences all kinds of things. It influences their behavior, it influences the way we, outsiders looking in, see them. It influences a million things. It influences even employers. We've heard that. You don't employ somebody who comes from there. That's not a good idea. They're going to rob you or whatever they're going to do. So I'm talking extremes now, but labeling does have a big effect on self-identity. It does have a big effect on influencing our behaviors. I've talked about this before. I worked on a housing estate in South London near to Croydon, and it was expected that the kids on that housing estate were largely bad kids. Criminals, broke into houses, all kinds of stuff like that. Some of them did. Some of them lived the attitude of that was labeled on their estate. So they became something that really they weren't. Patient made a good point in our pre-show chat, and she talked about the children at school, the beginning of school. What we call in France a maternelle, in UK, I think is playgroup or kindergarten. Kids at that age, they don't care. They're just 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. They're there to play. They're there to get on with people. They're there to have fun. And they go to infant school and they do the same, and they love it, and they draw pictures and they listen to stories, and life is cool. But then they start to reach this other age where they identify with some of the stereotypes. They hear what's happening to their brothers and sisters out there in the big world, their older brothers and sisters, and then they start to mimic. And then we go down the path of self-fulfilling prophecy almost. So it's difficult. So we've got to think carefully. But how about we take it all the way back, first of all, back to parents? Because much of it does start with us. So what can we do? Patience, what do you think?
So there are so many things in terms of we could talk about in terms of label, because when you think about it, even in just the household, in the household you already get you start to get labeled, and this happens really naturally. So, for example, if you are if you have many children in the household, often you would have people being labeled by the character. Oh, this one is the feisty one. This one is the quiet one. This one is the studious one. The one that's more cleverer. And even I'm gonna weigh my words here, but the one who's more intelligent, or the one who's a bookworm, the one who is more the sports person. And by doing this already in the household, so I'm really talking about something really small here that could be contained, but can also have really a lot of ripple effect that are not only positive, but also negative. So here is, like, for example, the child who is really clever, who has really good marks, really good grades at school. What happens when the other brother or the other sister has less grades than the first child, for example, and then it becomes like a comparison, basically a comparison war, if we can say it like that. And it becomes like, you know what, you've been labeled as such, so this is who you need to be. What happens with the children in general, and I'm really talking about children, not just young people, but children, is that we then start to adopt what is being taught about us. So, for example, if you've been given the title as the more intelligent or the more clever, you want to be able to take that on. You're going to put the pressure on yourself so that you always have good marks. You're going to be making sure that everywhere you go, you keep this image of the person who's the cleverer, the more intelligent, etc., etc. Then what comes with that behavior is then not only the label, but the behavior from the parents that comes and is reflected to the child. So, for example, because they're the most intelligent, the parent, I'm surely, are so proud. So, because they're so proud, they're giving that image that because you are doing this, I am so proud of you. It's no longer about just because you're my child, I'm so proud of you. It's because you have this character, this image, I'm so proud of you. So what happens there is that it can go in two ways. It can go in the way where it's really motivating for that child. It really depends on the mindset the child has. So if the child has a mindset that is really like a growth mindset, what will happen is that they will take it as a motivation and be like, oh yeah, I'm inspired to do more, and so that my parents are proud and I'm giving the example to others in my family. However, you have some children who might not be at that level. And if they're not at that level, what happens? They get it as a pressure. Oh my God, I need to do it. If I don't do it, this will happen. There will be negative consequences, and I will lose this favorite place, and I will lose this place as the intelligent one, the bookworm one. So here, I'm just giving you an example of something that can happen in the home already, and how labeling starts from little things such as you're the kind one, you're the most intelligent, or you're this and you're that. So here, what we can do, and we can start doing from the beginning, is showing showing, and really, when I say showing, is being a role model. Yeah, as a parent, is being a role model, as to say that you are not one thing, you are many things, and those many things makes you a unique person, someone who is a unique individual. There's never going to be another one like you, and we love you, we respect you, and we accept you the way you are. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think those are brilliant points, Patience. I
Mm.
was just thinking about one of the labels that I used to carry. I was the shy one, apparently. Um, Here he is. He's shy. He won't have much. He's shy. And I heard that so many times it drove me nuts. I was never shy, not ever. Um, what I am, is I'm introvert, but I'm also extrovert. So extrovert, I can sit in front of the camera and talk all day and be very happy about it. But the introverted side of me needs Zen time. So I need to step back sometimes. I need to think. I need to relax. I need to cut off. We all need to do that to a point. But I have this need to do that. But people misread it as shy, and they
Mm.
labeled it as shy. So if I'm, for example, in a group of 20 people for a few hours, I need to discharge all of that energy that I've collected whilst I've been with that group of people. So I need to step away. I need to go and be shy somewhere,
Yeah.
which is, which is a very different thing to the thing I was being labeled for. So we've got to be careful. We've got to try and learn about our kids. Nobody took the time to learn about why it was that I needed time out occasionally and that I would take myself away from social situations. You know, now if people had spent time doing that, they wouldn't have needed to call me the shy one, the quiet one who had nothing to say, I had loads to say. You know, so that's worth thinking about. And another example just came to mind. So so Patience has talked about in the home how we can protect and look after our kids and help them to be who they're supposed to be, not who we think they should be by attaching all these labels. But when we get to school, I remember being at school, and I'm thinking high school now, so between 12 and 16 plus years of age. And one of the things that used to make me laugh, because I wasn't kind of subject to it, was that there were a lot of kids in my class who had older brothers and sisters in the same school. And the number of times teachers used to compare the kids in my class to their older brother and sister. You're not like your sister or brother.
Mm.
They're much better than you. You're blah, 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 blah. Absolutely unhelpful.
Mm.
Didn't help anybody. And I knew some of these kids quite well, and I know they struggled with those comparisons, those labels that teachers were attaching. Now, the teachers may have been doing it to try to motivate. They may have had best intentions at heart, but they didn't always help. I often wondered if it happened lower down the school because I was the oldest of five. Maybe lower down the school, my siblings were being told stuff in relation to me. I don't know. We've never
Yes.
had that conversation, but could be interesting. Maybe I'll have that conversation just to find out. Um, so we need to be aware of what's going on around us. We need to be aware of all the different things. And then on a kind of contentious note, Patience and I were talking about the new education minister in France, and he's doing a few crazy things in the school system that I really can't agree with. But what he's also doing is attaching huge labels to young people.
Mm.
So, for example, young women aren't allowed to wear what might be seen as the Muslim dress. I'm not talking about headscarves and face masks and all that stuff. I'm talking about the dress that they wear. Quite often they're colourful, sometimes they're black, sometimes they're not. But they're not allowed to wear them in schools anymore because it's seen as a symbol of the Muslim faith. And in France, we're not supposed to outwardly practice or show who we are in terms of our faith. And that includes Christian people as well. So I don't wear a cross. I wear it's a pagan symbol. Don't tell the Minister of Education. But you're not allowed to wear a cross in school, for example, and for it to be visible. And that includes teachers as well. That's not just young people. So there all kinds of labeling is going on. And my daughter has two of those dresses that have been banned in schools because her mother-in-law on the other side of the family sent them over from Mayotte because she happens to be pregnant. And incidentally, they look cool. They're great colours, but she wouldn't be allowed to wear them in school or university when she studies at university, but she studies by distance. So if she goes into university, she couldn't wear those dresses, which is a little bit crazy, is it not?
Mm.
So we need to be very aware. So we can't fight the system. We know that. We can try. The Gilets jaunes in France tried to fight the system just before COVID kicked in a big way. They didn't really win. So what can we do? We can go back to the family and say, look, this isn't who we are. This is labeling. This is labeling that's not helping us. So we can have the conversations with our young people. We can disagree with the education minister. We can say, actually, the labeling that's going on there is completely wrong. But unfortunately, we can't really do much about it. So let's just go with the flow and let's not worry about what he or she thinks. Sometimes we've got to do that. Now, that might sound a little bit dramatic. Is it dramatic? What do you think, Kate?
So it's not dramatic, but it's not dramatic. However, I do believe that it comes back to the home. The reason why we're saying this, that it comes back to the home, is that if I am able to teach my child how to understand themselves, then they are able to articulate who they are. Therefore, when they are subjected to a labeling, they are able to communicate clearly and without an extreme response, if I can say it like that. Without an extreme response, they are able to articulate clearly who they are and to say, actually, no, I do not belong to this. Actually, no, I don't think in this way. Actually, I disagree with what you are saying. I think what often what happens is that because we are part, and I'm going to say we because I've done it. I'm going to be honest here. I'm sure I've labeled my children, or I'm sure I've labeled people, or even I've labeled myself and put myself into a box which I did not belong to because of circumstances. But what I'm saying is that all comes down to how to know yourself. Knowing yourself is going to come with the parents' ability to create that space where there's this kind of freedom of expression and freedom of understanding who oneself is, basically. And in that way, it's going to be easier to kind of like maybe not stop the stigma. The stigmas are always going to be there, but being able to fight it in a way that is activism, but on a personal level. I look at maybe the feminist movement, and I agree with a lot of things that the feminist movement are branding, if I can say it like that. However, there's some practices that I don't agree with. I don't agree with being naked in a church, or I don't agree with not necessarily because of the religion. It's because of the fact that you need to also respect that some people live a certain way, and therefore the fact that you are going against against somebody else's way of living, you are creating somewhere the box that you don't want to be in yourself. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying that. But what I'm saying is that there are things that needs to have nuances, and often when people get into activism, it's a lot of opposites. It's a lot of really really good or really really bad. It's there's no middle ground, and I think this is where we have to come back to the only person that can really communicate for themselves, which is the individual.
So, just one more thing that I think is pertinent here. I'm just going to talk briefly about one of my therapy clients. So, she's my therapy client because she had some challenges that go way back to when she was about 4 years old. She's over 40 years old now. So, these challenges have been with her for a very long time. And they've caused all kinds of chaos in her life. It started with what I would call a poor sense of self-identity. And the reason why she had a poor sense of self-identity is because she was labeled.
Yeah.
She was labeled as unable to do a particular thing. I'm not going to talk about what that thing was. It's not important. She was told that she wasn't good enough to do what she wanted to do. She was trying to show her parent in particular how she could do some things. And the parent was saying, nope, this isn't you. You can't do this. So her self-identity eventually said, nope, I can't do this. Nope, I can't do this. The thing was, what she discovered many years later through coaching and therapy is that the things she was told she shouldn't be doing were the things she should have been doing in a career in her life. And now she's found those things again, and that's what she's doing, and she's incredibly successful. But it was an incredibly long journey. It was a painful journey, all because somebody labeled her as not able to do a particular thing. So let's think really carefully. That went all the way back to the parent. Okay, she doesn't sit and point her finger at the parent, but she's very aware of where it started, and how it developed from there. So we've got to think carefully. Let's not put our kids in boxes.
Yeah. And oh my God, you know what you've just said? It just reminded me. So basically, I'm not going to say who it is, but my cousin is a really, he was a really big footballer, basically in France. And when you look at the story, so the cousins and from that side, so there was one who was in football, then the other one had to be in football, then the other one had to be in football. So it was basically, the idea was whatever happens, one or two or three or many, we're gonna be in football. But what the other side of that, so that's a good side. There's a good side of, like, you know what, we're gonna be into this football thing, we're motivating ourselves, da, 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 da. However, another side that came from that was like, oh, I'm not good enough. So one of my cousin, who was the brother, he had like a little bit of like physical impediment. So therefore, he was deemed as like, he's not gonna be, and I'm so sorry to say it like that, but he's not gonna be a footballer, so he's not gonna be one that is gonna bring more of the riches basically in the family. And often what happens, especially coming from, and here I'm really talking about my background as in these West African communities, is that once somebody is in the celebrity status or the wealth status, they kind of like rule over everything that's happening in them. So you can see how the labeling can be as positive as it can be so negative. There's so much we want to talk about with labels, and I think it's going to go for a few episodes. So bear with us for this next month that is coming, because we're going to have a lot to say about labeling, and we haven't even started to scratch the surface here. Unfortunately, our time is coming to an end. So I'm going to ask Steve if he has anything else he wants to add. And then we'll see you next week. Next week, do not, whatever you're doing, miss this episode, because it's going to be a great episode.
Yeah, I think I'm good to leave it where we are. Thanks, Patience. I don't want to start another conversation. I do, but not right now.
Yes, there's so much we want to tell you about and everything. So what we'll do, anyway, get in touch with us if you are at a level where you want to get support in terms of your communication skills with, as we are talking about labeling. Get in touch with us if you feel like your child is going through something, a challenge at this moment that needs support with it. Get in touch with us. We've got all the details in the comment below, and we'll be really happy to see you, to help you, and to see you next week as well for the next episode. So that will be it for us today. Thank you so much, and you take care, guys.
Thanks,
See you
everybody.
soon.